Hi there, folks. It's time to talk about encouraging farm families, especially farm fathers. And I have a card here that just says, "So very grateful for you." Now, I know you don't have this exact same card, but what would it look like if you just even took a piece of random paper or a note that you picked up from a hotel room and just wrote something on it to encourage your farm father this June? And not just on Father's Day, but all throughout the year, because it will really help the culture of your farm. If I could show you a way to increase farm family harmony on your farm and help you be more profitable at the same time, would you be willing to do it? Because many books on management have been written about encouraging the heart of your business. And the book I want to talk about today is called The Gift of the Blessing, which was written by Dr. Gary Smalley and Dr. John Trent. Unfortunately, now I think it's out of print, but the ideas are still very valid. So here's some practical ways to bless your farming father. First of all, praise and acknowledgement. Our son Ian will take a card and just write in it things like, "Dear Dad, thank you for joining me in business. Thank you for showing me what it means to balance and navigate work and family. And thank you for giving me many opportunities. I really appreciate you." It costs you nothing except some time. As founders age, they wonder what their new role will be when their names are not necessarily on assets anymore or when they aren't the main manager anymore. And 40 years of farming earns them some respect in my books. But can you also acknowledge their wisdom, and can you seek them out as a wise elder and praise and acknowledge and thank them for their hard work? Are you thankful for the opportunities that you've been given? All you need to say is, "I appreciate your input, Dad, and I respect your years of experience." Another thing you have to do is figure out what to do with your unresolved anger, because anger is a secondary emotion, and Dr. Dan Allender used a model where it's actually coming from hurt, from fear, or frustration. And some of you are thinking right now, "Oh, Elaine, you should see all the frustration I have. We've been talking about getting a transition plan in place for over 11 years and nothing's happening. Nothing ever changes on the farm. It feels like being in a conversation that never ends." So, what are you going to take responsibility for and be accountable to drain away unresolved anger and resolve conflict? What would you regret if you found your dad dead beside the baler and you had no time to say goodbye and you had all these unresolved issues? So there's a few key emotional and physical symptoms that happen when you have anger. So Dr. Smalley suggests becoming tender-hearted with your words. So soften your tone. Talk to your parents like you would talk to your best friend who you like. Increase your understanding by listening well and ask about the hurt and say, "I'm just curious, Dad. Things don't seem okay. What's going on for you? Would you really share with me? Because I can't read your mind. I'd really like to know." And recognize when you have caused offense and make quick repair and admit that you made a mistake. And if the culture in your farm is it's okay to make mistakes because we learn from them, not it's not okay to make mistakes because we're just going to pound shame and guilt into you because you screwed up again. Whatever happens on your farm that causes offense, you just say, "Hey, doesn't seem like things are okay. What would you like me to do differently?" And here's a very powerful question from Dr. Gary, the guy who wrote 5 Love Languages, Dr. Gary Chapman. So he says, what would you like me to do to make things right? So you take responsibility for the offense that's caused, you make repair, and then you fix it by saying, "What do I need to do to make this right?" Another thing is attempting to touch each other, even if it's just squeezing each other on the shoulder. And here's a news flash. My mom was always behind the kitchen counter and very rarely would sit down and have a face-to-face conversation with a cup of tea at the table. So if I wanted to have decent conversations with her, I'd plop her in a car and take her somewhere because she can't jump out at 100 clicks. And you might think that's funny, but think about all the shoulder-to-shoulder conversations you've had with your dad as you're walking to the barn or walking to the shop or checking the cattle. Another thing Smalley recommends is to seek forgiveness from the one that you've offended. because you don't want to have unresolved issues if something happens to anybody in your family. Another encouragement from the gift of the blessing is to remember to give the inheritance of a good name. And how are you protecting your reputation? And what kind of behavior do you not accept because you have a high value on your farm for honesty, respect, affirmation, and kindness, all the things that will be of good character. The neighbors are not fooled. Bad seed doesn't produce a bountiful crop. So what seeds and what weeds in your behavior, so to speak, are choking out your good name? You need to deal with it. And Smalley says our name is something that no matter what, we pass it down to our kids. And it can be either a blessing or a curse. So I choose blessing. Here's another big one. I just found out news another friend has been diagnosed with prostate cancer and will require surgery. So taking care of your health is really important. And I received a really long letter from a young farmer who had high blood pressure just based on the stress and the angst because he was working hard, but his sibling wasn't working as hard. And Ralph Waldo Emerson said, you have to take care of your health. Your health is your wealth. So encourage your farm father and your siblings to seek medical checkups and get those prostates checked and have chest x-rays and heart tests and blood tests. Your family doesn't want you to be a martyr, but they do want you to be happy and healthy as a team player and also to have some fun in the family with the grandkids and the cousins. Another way that you can encourage farm fathers is by sharing financial responsibility and being teachable in that vein. And many young farmers that I meet are not being compensated fairly. And there's old money stories around, we can't afford to do that. This is all I can afford to pay. You'll get it when I turn the farm over to you. Well, that's a conversation, not a contract. And many farm families are struggling because they don't have financial accountability and they don't have good financial transparency. So maybe it's important that you understand that your net worth is not your, in my books anyway, measure of success. And men have this uncanny need to tell me quite often as total strangers what their net worth is. I don't care. What I care more about is that you're rich in relationship because that's what you're going to take with you into your future legacy. Anyway, the whole financial story is with land values adding more zeros to your balance sheet. There's a lot more friction around fear of the future and having enough. And those are financial conversations that you need to open up and be transparent, be willing to bring your financial goals and vision to the table, and be able to understand the why of your mom and dad. And also some of their fear based on you buying the farm or getting the farm and then flipping it 5 years later for cash. So financial transparency talks about what you feel about money, what is true, and what you're afraid about for the future that you actually have control over, that you can create more certainty around. And that old control thing, letting go. Why is your father not letting go? Why is he so afraid or hanging on tight to his farm rather than our farm? Well, have you come from curiosity? You say, I'm just curious, Dad. Do you remember what it was like when you first owned your first piece of equipment or your first piece of land? And when you have those conversations, you understand the story or the weight that your father is carrying on his shoulders. Many of your fathers don't want you to be in big debt as young farmers, but we all know that debt is the current reality, and you have to have a capacity to service that debt. So you have to figure out that people have control issues for many reasons. Some of the way to walk around that or to blow that open in a good way is by creating solutions, putting yourself in the other person's perspective and sharing your emotions around that curiosity. But as they're growing older, they have and feel they have less and less control. And that creates uncertainty and anxiety. And so ask them for what they need. And there's a huge question. Dad, seems like things are harder for you now. You're getting tired by 8 o'clock. What is it that you need? How would working on this farm fit you differently now that you're aging in place here? So there's lots of things to talk about. And if you go back to the written part of this blog, you can read the blessing of words that Adrian Rogers had, and I'll speak it here for you now. This is for you, Dad, the father I love, for the one who has cared all these years but has never heard enough about how much I care. So this is for you, for the one who has helped me through all my children, fears and failures, all turned that he could, and turned that all that he could into successes and dreams. For the man who is the wonderful example of what more men should be. For the person whose devotion to his family is marked by gentle strength and guidance, and whose love of life, sense of direction, and down-to-earth wisdom makes more sense to me now than nearly any other thing that I've learned. If you never knew how much I respected you, I want you to know it now, Dad. And if you never knew how much I admire you, let me say I think you're the best father that any child ever had. And this is a note filled with love, and it's all for you, Dad. Now, you may not have a poem to whip out of your back pocket, but there's 3 very powerful words. I love you. I respect you. Take some time to tell your father that you are so very grateful for him. And don't delay, because you don't know what you don't know and what the future holds. So make quick repair, keep short accounts, and be kind, loving and respectful and affirming now, because today is the gift that you've got. See you next time.